The first time he met his future wife, NASA, this unlucky protagonist, got launched 10 meters by a car. Speaking of NASA, his life started abstract right from birth. His parents thought his eyes sparkled, so they named him after NASA, the American Space Agency. Because of that, everyone assumed he had to become an astronaut, and his name became a running joke. NASA realized this and decided to work hard, so that when people mentioned his name, they'd think of him, not the space agency. He studied nonstop all the way to 9th grade. He planned to apply straight to a top-tier local high school. He didn't even leave himself a backup plan. His homeroom teacher told him to think carefully about his future, said that although NASA's grades were excellent, his personality was just way too arrogant. Ever since his parents gave him that name, NASA swore he'd never let them interfere with his life again. He even said he'd honestly accept whatever fate brought him. In the following months, NASA kept ranking first in the grade. But fate came to suddenly. After the third exam, on the way home from school, he fell in love at first sight with a red-haired girl his age across the street. He tried to walk over and talk to her, and got sent flying by a truck. He almost got isekai'd on the spot, but even then, NASA still regretted not asking for her name. When he looked up again, he saw the girl was also bleeding heavily. From what the driver said, she got hit while trying to save him, and she was seriously injured. NASA tried to ask her name, but his consciousness faded, and he passed out. He only remembered her silhouette as she left. Just like Princess Kaguya in the legend, NASA didn't want his story to end the same way, so he forced himself up. Using pure adrenaline, he climbed to his feet, sprinted 100 meters, and caught up to her. Seeing how wrecked he looked, the girl was surprised. How was this guy even still running? She hurriedly wiped the blood off him with her handkerchief, saying she didn't save his life just for him to die like this. Then she draped her coat over him. Her coat carried a faint scent, and NASA's heart pounded wildly. He couldn't help it. The girl in front of him was just too cute. She said NASA was badly injured. His legs were already broken, so she had to call an ambulance. NASA felt himself about to faint again, and remembered he still didn't know her name. He bit his lip, pushed himself up again, and told the story of Princess Kaguya, saying he didn't want to miss her the way the story's prince did. Then he confessed seriously, asking her to go out with him. The girl said, "Sure, but romance without marriage in mind is just playing around. If you're willing to date me with marriage as the premise, then yes." NASA was overjoyed, and agreed instantly. Right after answering, he blacked out. When he woke up again, it was already spring. The doctor told him that if the girl hadn't called the ambulance in time, he would have died on the spot. But the girl didn't leave her name. NASA was heartbroken, thinking he'd been rejected. For the next year, he studied while doing rehabilitation. Even though he got accepted to the best high school, he declined because he wanted to find that girl. He started working part-time everywhere, just hoping to see her again. His parents were worried he'd exhaust himself and tried to stop him, so NASA moved out and rented a small apartment. By age 18, he'd saved nearly 300,000 yen, but money wasn't his goal. His mind was filled only with that girl. Then one night, someone knocked on his door, and the girl of his dreams appeared. She told him her name was Tsukasa, and she called him husband. NASA absent-mindedly let Tsukasa inside. After all these years, seeing her again, she was still unbelievably cute. But then Tsukasa took out a marriage registration form. NASA was shocked, excited, and kind of felt like he was being scammed. But when he looked up and saw her adorable face, he thought, fine, scam me then. I'm willing. Anyway, he was smart. He could figure out the details later. He absolutely couldn't let the girl he loved slip away. Tsukasa looked at the form and nodded, satisfied. She even read out NASA's surname, because in Japan, after marriage, one partner must change their surname. Reality isn't like anime. Most surnames aren't that fancy. Japan is full of Satos now. Then Tsukasa took NASA straight to the government office. Apparently, they accept marriage papers 24/7. It's meant for people who work daytime, or celebrities who want to hide their marriage. Suddenly NASA remembered something. From the moment they met, Tsukasa had never mocked his name. Tsukasa said NASA was a great name. It's one of the birthplaces of astronauts' dreams, a romantic expression of humanity's longing for the stars. NASA's heart raced. If before it was love at first sight, now that he understood Tsukasa's inner self, he loved her even more. They finished registering their marriage. Tsukasa even brought her parents' consent form. NASA accepted the marriage gift in a daze. Tsukasa held out her hand to him. When they finally held hands, NASA's mind went blank. Oh my god. This is really an after-marriage romance. Their progress as a newlywed couple was insanely fast. Right after the marriage, Tsukasa said she had things to handle. She asked whether NASA had an extra blanket. NASA replied blankly, no. Tsukasa said she'd bring one then. NASA suddenly realized, right, they were married, so they'd be living together. He blushed with excitement, but then he remembered. His apartment was tiny, the safe space. His bed was only 80 centimeters wide. It was enough for him alone, but adding Tsukasa would make it wait to cramp. He even considered ordering a new bed urgently, but at this hour, there was no such service. So he started calculating how they could sleep, and concluded he'd have to hold Tsukasa. While sleeping, Tsukasa, returning home, immediately roasted him. That's not really possible, you know. Nasa's face turned red instantly, this time out of embarrassment. Tsukasa stared at him for a long moment. Nasa noticed she brought a suitcase. He wondered, if Tsukasa didn't go home this late, wouldn't her family worry? Tsukasa said she didn't have a home to return to. Nasa's heart raced like crazy. Tsukasa was really going to live with him. Tsukasa clarified, not just tonight, but from now on. They were married, after all. Nasa was so happy his hands shook. Tsukasa remembered Nasa had no extra blanket, and she didn't want him to get sick sleeping on the floor. So she planned to stay at a capsule hotel instead. Nasa was devastated. Tsukasa comforted him, saying now that they were married, she would never leave him. Her words hit him like a critical strike. Nasa dropped to his knees on the spot. But he was also curious. Why would someone as cute and beautiful as Tsukasa choose him? It was love at first sight for him, and she even saved his life. He had never really done anything for her. So why would Tsukasa choose him? The only thing he did was agree to marriage immediately. So Nasa finally asked the question. Tsukasa asked back, then why did you marry me? Nasa said, because I love you. Tsukasa smiled, I love you too, otherwise I'd never marry someone I didn't like. Before Nasa could ask, when she fell for him, Tsukasa had already decided to head to the hotel. Nasa, traumatized, couldn't let her leave just like that, so he decided to take Tsukasa out to buy a proper futon. Tsukasa said that since they were buying one, they should at least get a good quality set, so the two of them headed to the mall. Nasa told her to pick anything she liked, and that he would cover the bill. Tsukasa looked at him with a soft smile. So this is my first newlywed present, how? But she was curious about the differences between all the futons. To her surprise, Nasa knew everything. He was a top student after all, with a ridiculously good memory. Then Nasa suddenly realized, wait, isn't this basically a date? He gathered the courage and reached for her hand. Tsukasa didn't resist at all. She gently held his hand back and said they should walk around a bit more, since they were already out. In the end, they carried the futon home together. Nasa felt a little regretful. He thought Tsukasa could have picked a more expensive one, but Tsukasa said this was more than enough. Then she spread the futon directly on the floor, which instantly made Nasa blush again. Soon Tsukasa realized there was no bathroom in the house. Nasa usually used the public bath nearby. There also weren't any extra toiletries around. So Tsukasa took Nasa's hand and led him to the convenience store nearby. When they returned, Tsukasa went to the room to change into her pajamas. Nasa's brain crashed. Is this what marriage is? This is insane. Just one signature on a paper, and suddenly a boy and a girl can live under the same roof. Wow, everything he learned in school felt useless now. If something were to happen, wouldn't that be bad? But then again, they were legal adults and legally married, so technically, there was no issue. Blushing, Nasa also changed into pajamas. When he came out, he saw Tsukasa had already tied up her hair. She said she didn't want to sleep with her hair down. With the lights off, Tsukasa looked like a goddess bathed in moonlight. Nasa kept wondering, does she actually like me? But honestly, the fact that she even showed up was already enough to make him happy. Tsukasa smiled and wished him good night. Nasa's heart was pounding so hard, he couldn't fall asleep. Around 1 or 2 a.m. He noticed Tsukasa had fallen asleep, but her sleeping posture was not ideal. Actually, it was total chaos. Nasa hurried to cover her with a blanket. He even felt tempted to give his wife a kiss. They were legally married, after all, but he thought their first kiss should definitely happen when she was awake. So after tucking her in, he went back to his futon. Then Tsukasa got up sleepwalking to get some water, and she stole Nasa's futon. In the process, Nasa was freezing, but honestly very happy. The next morning, Tsukasa looked confused, and that alone made Nasa feel completely satisfied. She almost changed clothes right in front of him. Before realizing, Nasa panicked and rushed into the kitchen. Then the two started discussing how to address each other. Now that they shared a surname, Nasa decided he would call her Tsukasa. Tsukasa instantly turned red. Nasa said it sounded cuter that way. Tsukasa put on an apron. Nasa got excited. This is totally what newlyweds look like. Tsukasa sighed, we are newlyweds. When they opened the fridge, there were surprisingly a lot of ingredients left. Nasa said he had studied recipes to maintain a healthy diet. His solution was to cook every nutritious ingredient in one pot, so he ate hot pot every day with the exact same taste. Tsukasa felt a little bad for him. Then she showed him what real cooking looked like. In just 10 minutes, she served a full meal. One bite in, Nasa realized, same ingredients, but the technique and taste were on a whole other level. Tsukasa smirked proudly. As long as she had fresh ingredients, she could make anything delicious. After eating, the two decided to take a bath. Nasa took out his usual shampoo and body wash. Tsukasa shook her head, not good enough, so he made another trip to the convenience store. Don't think girls are naturally perfect. Born smelling sweet and soft, no way, we're all human. Being clean and pretty takes effort. These skincare products work for both men and women. Some guys are just way too sloppy. The two then headed to the bathhouse together. And there they met the bathhouse girl, Arisugawa, Nasa's former junior, and a certified veteran in life. Everything that comes out of his mouth is a joke. He thought Nasa was destined to stay single forever. Never expected Nasa to finally bring a girl. Nasa said he was already married. Arisugawa was stunned. So he decided to let Tsukasa bathe for free. As a wedding gift, Tsukasa went in first. Arisugawa stopped Nasa. Tsukasa is free, but you don't get to freeload. First explain what this marriage thing is. He was planning to congratulate Nasa for becoming a 30-year-old wizard someday. How did he suddenly get married? And the girl is only 16, you damn lolicon. Take my personality correction punch. Very soon Arisugawa realized there was a bigger issue. Nasa hadn't told Aya yet. Nasa was confused why he should tell Aya. Arisugawa rolled his eyes. He said Nasa was really dense, but he didn't plan to meddle. He simply asked when the wedding ceremony would be held. Nasa had completely forgotten. Not only that, he didn't even have a proposal or a ring. Arisugawa felt that even though they were married, they didn't seem to understand what marriage truly meant, but Nasa chose Tsukasa. And the fact that they married means Nasa has the responsibility to ensure Tsukasa's happiness. Of course, there's no law forcing him, but Nasa must, of his own will, offer Tsukasa his sincere heart. Arisugawa asked if Nasa truly married with resolve. Nasa said of course, even though he hadn't prepared any of those three things, but he was confident that he could make Tsukasa happy. Why? Because he loves Tsukasa the most. And just then Tsukasa came out to grab her bath set. The two blushed instantly. Tsukasa said shouting things like that embarrasses her, but she was still happy. Arisugawa sighed. Nasa was really blessed. Nasa entered the bathhouse, still amazed. This must be the legendary bath episode. Maybe if he were lucky, he'd get to see his wife's post-bath glow. But the moment he crawled out of the tub, Arisugawa punished him, mopping the floor with a smile, staring right at Nasa. Nasa was so terrified. He jumped back into the bath. Arisugawa just kept mopping outside. Meanwhile, in the women's bath, Tsukasa saw the room was empty, took off her clothes, humming, and entered, only to find a blue-haired girl inside, apparently the eldest daughter of the bathhouse owner. The girl had been dozing off and accidentally saw Tsukasa humming, so she decided to scrub Tsukasa's back to apologize. Seeing how desperate the girl looked, Tsukasa realized she was the clumsy beauty type, so she agreed, but the girl's speaking style was a bit strange. Tsukasa understood she meant to compliment her, but comparing someone's skin to an iPhone was not ideal. The girl hurriedly apologized and introduced herself as Aya. Tsukasa also told her name, because she was married. She now shared Nasa's last name. Aya thought Tsukasa was Nasa's relative. Tsukasa nodded. A married couple counts as family, but Aya misunderstood and thought they were siblings. Nasa, soaking too long, nearly saw his life flash before his eyes. He thought he had died in that accident. Luckily, when he opened his eyes, Tsukasa was there. She even praised him. He looked cute while sleeping. Soon they met Aya outside too. Aya still thought they were related. Nasa also believed a married couple is family, so the misunderstanding persisted. Tsukasa was curious how Nasa knew Aya. Nasa said Aya was his middle school classmate. Aya said Nasa had helped their bathhouse a lot. Originally, the bathhouse was run by the family, but after the grandfather passed, business plummeted. Her father, under the excuse of revamping the place, went crazy making mascots, then embezzled money, and eloped with the idol who voiced the mascot. The sisters almost ended up homeless. Nasa stayed up all night, helping with the data, and suggested Aya apply for government subsidies. Thanks to Nasa, the bathhouse recovered. Now business was booming. Nasa insisted the place was popular on its own, but Aya believed their success was thanks to him. The two started thanking each other endlessly. Tsukasa noticed Aya's feelings immediately. On the way home, she asked Nasa if Aya was cute. Nasa nodded. Aya had always been popular in class. Tsukasa felt a little jealous. They passed by a wedding venue. Nasa remembered what Arisugawa said. Could it be Tsukasa wanted a wedding too? Tsukasa just wanted Nasa to call her cute, but they were totally on different wavelengths. Nasa thought she wanted a wedding dress and a real ceremony. If his wife wanted it, he must make it happen. He handed her the key and dashed out instantly. Tsukasa sighed. Why was it so hard? Just to compliment her, a luxury car pulled up nearby. Watching Tsukasa walk away, a blonde girl inside smiled. I found you, sis. Tsukasa had always longed for a warm family, but she never expected to become a lonely newlywed on day one. There was only one key, and she didn't have a phone. Contacting NASA was impossible, so she cleaned the place while waiting for him, and discovered NASA was ridiculously clean. The house was spotless. Tsukasa planned to tidy other areas, but didn't dare open the wardrobe, afraid of seeing something she shouldn't. Then the doorbell rang. She thought NASA was back. But there was her younger sister Kitose. Kitose acted arrogant at first, but after being refused entry, she immediately surrendered. She said she came to take Tsukasa home, and Tokiko would worry. But Tsukasa said going back would only trouble Tokiko, and told Kitose not to jump on her. She told Kitose to report the marriage to Tokiko. Once the time was right, she would bring her husband home to visit. Kitose completely broke down. The sky collapsed and cried at the bottom of the stairs. NASA returned and saw her, immediately offering a handkerchief. Kitose said she came to bring her family member home. Though they weren't related by blood, to Kitose, her sister was like a moonlit butterfly, delicate, fragile, yet the most important person to her. But she couldn't call the police, because Tsukasa ran away from home. It would trouble people. NASA said she could ask for help if she needed anything. Kitose said NASA was nicer than she expected. She heard NASA was looking for a place to propose. She planned to recommend a mountain spot. Just then Tsukasa came down, calling NASA husband. Kitose mentally exploded. You are the one who tricked my sister. Tsukasa sensed danger. But NASA used his excellent communication skills. He didn't deny anything outright, just calmly talked and offered a solution. Sit down and talk things out. Understanding each other's thoughts, Kitose almost got pulled into his flow, but quickly recovered. If she defeated NASA, Tsukasa would still be hers, so she tied NASA up and dragged him away. To talk, Tsukasa was helpless and didn't want to chase publicly. NASA was worried the neighbors would misunderstand or call the police. Kitose said Tsukasa wouldn't call the police. Then she snatched NASA's phone. She said NASA must have some skills to lure her sister away. Pretty beau playboy. Kitose said she wouldn't force them apart, but she would take photos of NASA cheating. Then Tsukasa would see NASA's true nature and divorce him. She called out the two maids at home. Charlotte and Aurora appeared. They heard they needed to take cheating photos of NASA. Charlotte took one look at NASA and immediately began addressing. Kitose and Aurora were stunned. At least resist a little. Kitose hurriedly explained she only needed pathetic photos, enough to make Tsukasa hate NASA. While the three argued, NASA quietly slipped away. They only tied his hands, not his feet. As he ran, NASA thought Tsukasa said she was taken care of here. Maybe one of these rooms was hers. Then Kitose and the others arrived, and NASA instinctively hid in a room. He suddenly smelled Tsukasa's scent. Bro, are you a bloodhound? Inside, he found a piece of lunar rock, and the entire rock was stored in an airtight device. If it were real, it would be priceless. Then Charlotte burst in. NASA had entered a very important room. He knew too much. Time to die. Kitose rushed in to stop her, but she was too late. Charlotte accidentally cracked a glass, holding the moon rock. Kitose panicked. NASA immediately asked for tools and fixed the oxygen seal. He asked, "Is this real?" Kitose said of course. Aunt Tokiko borrowed it, just to make Tsukasa happy. NASA wondered, happy with this? Kitose asked if he didn't know Tsukasa's true identity. NASA said Tsukasa was amazing. She cooks well, is gentle, and incredibly cute and beautiful, though her sleeping posture is a little messy. Kitose said she knew all that. Tsukasa even saved her life once. What a coincidence. NASA also saved Tsukasa. So after hearing Tsukasa was stolen by NASA, Kitose couldn't accept it. Only she should be allowed to marry Tsukasa. At that moment, Charlotte grabbed NASA. Aurora snapped photos, and in an instant, photoshopped them perfectly. NASA complained, with skills like that, why are you a maid? Go chase Hollywood. But, unexpectedly, Tsukasa stormed in and saw the photos. She immediately argued with NASA, saying she'd drag him outside for a good lesson. Kitose proudly thought her plan succeeded, or asked if they were sure the two wouldn't escape. Kitose realized something was wrong. Meanwhile, NASA desperately explained. Tsukasa told him she would never believe the photos. They were just pretending to create a chance to escape, but if the photo were real, she absolutely wouldn't forgive him. After that, Tsukasa led NASA into a long tunnel. Watching her back, NASA fell into deep thought. He realized he actually knew nothing about his wife's past, but that didn't matter. As long as Tsukasa stayed by his side, everything was fine. After leaving the tunnel, the two arrived inside a church. Tsukasa said this was her usual secret spot, so she wanted to share this happiness with NASA. NASA's heart started racing. Inside the quiet church, he seriously proposed to Tsukasa. Then he just went for it. A sudden kiss. Let's go. This relationship is speedrunning. By the way, Tsukasa really loves a certain shark movie, a story about a shark fighting astronauts in space. NASA first questioned how this was supposed to be good, but, since Tsukasa liked it so much, he didn't dare complain. The problem was, they didn't even have a TV at home, and NASA rarely watched movies to begin with. Tsukasa thought this was bad. What if her favorite movie got a sequel one day? Then she wouldn't be able to share her joy with NASA immediately. Tsukasa takes movies very seriously. Since she wanted NASA to catch up, they had to start from the director's earlier works, and she needed to take notes on every film's background. Seeing her like this made NASA realize something. Tsukasa might look calm and cool, but, when it comes to movies, she's strangely passionate. Kitos didn't come to bother them for once, because right now, Tsukasa's favorite movie was airing. If she interrupted her, she'd probably get smashed into the ground. Little did she know, Tsukasa was already out shopping for a TV with NASA. Tsukasa thought a cheap one was enough. Since a TV wasn't a necessity for NASA, it's the thought that mattered. But, NASA insisted they had to buy one. Later, NASA told Arisugawa that he proposed to Tsukasa, and he told her exactly what he said. Arisugawa asked if Tsukasa vomited from cringe. NASA didn't dare mention that he actually kissed Tsukasa too. But, that smug expression of his made Arisugawa feel extremely uneasy. Arisugawa asked if NASA proposed without a ring. Yes, she asked twice. NASA wondered if Tsukasa would even care about a ring. Arisugawa told him he doesn't understand his wife at all. Women often say they don't care, but that's just to protect their husband's fragile pride. If a man were truly stingy with his own wife, that marriage would be doomed. At that moment, Tsukasa remembered the kiss earlier, and her face turned bright red in the bathhouse. When she walked out of the bath, she ran straight into NASA, and suddenly felt embarrassed. NASA, still thinking about buying a ring, blushed too. Before leaving for work, NASA told Tsukasa he'd be back around 9 p.m. Tsukasa looked a little disappointed, so she told NASA to follow her to the park. NASA didn't know what she wanted at first. Then he realized, maybe Tsukasa was feeling lonely, and that instantly melted him. He grabbed her hand. The two made eye contact, and kissed. Two maids hiding in the bushes witnessed the entire thing, and debated whether to tell Kitos. If they told her, NASA might get sliced in half. Well, maybe not that big a piece. After kissing, the two were extremely shy, and babbled a bunch of nonsense. The maids were speechless. Stop rubbing it in. Before leaving for work, NASA hesitated. He worried Tsukasa might disappear while he was gone. Tsukasa covered his mouth, telling him to just come home early. NASA happily headed for his job. While working as an accountant, he kept thinking about their kiss at the park. Once he actually started working, he realized he missed Tsukasa terribly. That was the moment he understood the importance of a wedding ring. Even if they were apart, it would symbolize that they belonged together. At first, NASA took countless part-time jobs, just to provide for Tsukasa, but he had never been able to land a stable job, which made him more and more depressed. But now, coming home to a warm light, and the smell of dinner, during dinner, NASA suddenly asked Tsukasa if she wanted an engagement ring, a symbol of their love. Tsukasa teased him for acting like a teenage girl, but she said she didn't really need one. They were already married, why bother with an engagement ring? NASA explained that the symbol of love should be the wedding ring. An engagement ring is something the man gives the woman. Just one ring, to symbolize his feelings. So engagement rings tend to be extravagant, something a woman would wear to formal parties. But the true symbol of shared love is the wedding ring, a pair worn on each partner's ring finger. Since it's worn daily, the design is simpler. Tsukasa felt they skipped the engagement stage, so buying one now wasn't necessary. And wedding rings are expensive, they should save money. But NASA clearly really wanted to buy one. He believed making love tangible would give them more security. As the saying goes, where the money goes, the love goes. What else is money for, if not for your wife and future kids? Tsukasa thought diamonds were too expensive. NASA probably had no idea how terrifying the price was. So she planned to take him to a jewelry shop and let him see reality. Sure enough, the next day they went to the store. NASA froze at the prices. Even removing to zeros would still be expensive. The clerk explained, their diamonds were of the highest quality. Engagement and wedding rings are precious. After all, NASA remembered Tsukasa's smile, and almost bought one on the spot. But Tsukasa dragged him out immediately. She didn't expect NASA to nearly go berserk. But NASA didn't look like he was giving up, so Tsukasa took him to another store. A ring that cost 3.4 million yen earlier was only 290,000 yen here. But the shine was noticeably duller. Tsukasa told NASA not to waste money, but NASA believed Tsukasa needed a ring to ease her loneliness. That way, being apart wouldn't feel painful. Tsukasa's heart melted, so that's why he insisted. She happily kissed him, and finally agreed. They settled on a cheap pair of matching rings, because the value wasn't in the price or appearance, but in the meaning behind them. And honestly, 30,000 yen isn't cheap either. The two walked home hand in hand, because of Tsukasa's wild sleeping habits. She often tossed and turned, and woke up at night to drink water. After drinking, she would steal Nasa's blanket, but tonight was different. She actually climbed into Nasa's bed. Nasa blushed like crazy, but bravely hugged Tsukasa from behind, and accidentally touched something dangerous. Suddenly Tsukasa turned over, opened her eyes in her sleep, grabbed Nasa and bit him. Soon after, she went back to her own bed, but not before kissing Nasa 3 times. Nasa couldn't sleep all night. The next morning he got up, with a red face and dark circles. After last night, Nasa realized they needed a double bed, not just because he wanted to sleep with his wife, but also because he couldn't let her sleep on the floor forever. And of course, you know. But their place was way too cramped, so he started considering moving out. They needed separate bedroom and living room space. That way the living room could fit a big TV, and a sofa so they could watch movies together. And the new place would even have a bathroom. Nasa imagined the scene, and thought it sounded perfect. He brought the idea to Tsukasa immediately. But Tsukasa said the small room didn't bother her. She liked being able to feel Nasa's presence nearby. Both of them blush, move or not, both seemed good. Every protagonist has a dream, and Nasa's dream was to sleep in the same bed with his wife. Arisugawa said married couples could even hold hands while sleeping. Nasa wanted to move even more. Arisugawa asked what Tsukasa thought. Nasa said she didn't seem to mind the small space. Arisugawa said she was such a thoughtful wife, but if she got married, and didn't even have a 1-bedroom apartment, she'd punch her husband into orbit. Nasa agreed. It really was unfair to Tsukasa. But he worried Tsukasa might not like the idea, so he planned to act cute when he got home. But when he opened the door, Tsukasa was changing clothes. Nasa's face exploded with redness as he apologized. Then he brought up the idea of moving. Not because of the accident just now, though. Honestly, it wasn't an accident, just married couple stuff. So Nasa started listing the advantages. First, the living room. They could experience movies properly. Tsukasa was tempted. Then she heard they could have a bookshelf to display all her DVDs and even store manga. But Tsukasa worried it'd be too expensive. Then Nasa played his trump card. If they shared a bed, they could hold hands while sleeping. Tsukasa was defeated, shamefully, totally defeated. But if they wanted a new place, they needed a guarantor. Nasa said they could just tell his parents, but then he realized he hadn't even told them he was married yet. He asked Tsukasa to go back to the room and quickly called his mom. He chatted a bit, then dropped the bomb. I'm already married. He'd never heard such loud screaming. Nasa quickly explained. He married the girl who once saved him, and that Tsukasa was very cute. Tsukasa overheard that part. She asked what exactly he told them. After the accident, Nasa had told his parents about Tsukasa. He said he was saved by the cutest girl in the universe. Tsukasa almost couldn't handle the attack. She said she should greet his parents properly. Nasa hesitated. He was embarrassed to introduce such an adorable wife to his parents, because they were not very normal. Sure enough, his mom texted. She guessed Nasa suddenly announced the marriage, because their room was too small, and he wanted to move. She accused him of being too horny. Seriously, both his parents were masters of dirty jokes, and she said unless he brought his wife home, she wouldn't be their guarantor. So they decided to visit Nasa's hometown that weekend. Kito's got the news. Nasa's home wasn't even in Tokyo, or added, isn't this basically a honeymoon? Kito's mentally collapsed. Nasa realized, yeah, this was a honeymoon. He wasn't thrilled about seeing his parents, but taking Tsukasa on a honeymoon sounded great. When Tsukasa heard honeymoon, she immediately said she wanted something. She asked Nasa to buy her a camera. He agreed without hesitation. She didn't want it for landscapes. She wanted to record their life together. 1 picture every day, so memories wouldn't fade. A secret just for the 2 of them. Nasa was ecstatic. He immediately grabbed the camera and took a picture of Tsukasa, 1 shot. And Nasa awakened a strange new hobby. He started taking photos of his wife nonstop. His hands couldn't stop clicking. Tsukasa quickly grabbed the camera and took one of Nasa. She said he looked like a creep today. Nasa nearly died from embarrassment. Tsukasa said that was the charm of photography. The night before the trip, the couple dragged their suitcases to the station. Before entering, Nasa had Tsukasa stand in a corner and took another picture. At this point, he felt like the camera's memory definitely wouldn't be enough. Tsukasa suggested taking a bus home. Nasa worried it might be too tiring, but Tsukasa felt that compared to 150 years ago, modern transportation was way faster. Not good. Tsukasa's identity might really be unusual. Once the couple boarded the bus, Tsukasa said she wanted to check out the late-night rest stop. When Kito's learned that they actually took a highway bus, she decided to follow them in her car, or reminded her that Tokiko would be angry if she knew. But Kito's couldn't hold it in. They were going to meet the parents. She absolutely refused to acknowledge their marriage. Nasa couldn't rest well on the bus. But Tsukasa was already sleeping like a log when the bus bumped slightly. She leaned directly onto Nasa's shoulder, making it even harder for him to sleep. When they arrived at a service area for a break, Nasa finally realized Tsukasa's stamina was basically superhuman. After all, back then she got hit by a truck saving him. Yet, while Nasa was hospitalized and unconscious, Tsukasa acted like nothing happened. Seeing Nasa looking so weak, Tsukasa felt a bit sorry for him. Not wanting his wife to regret their trip, Nasa forced a smile and said he was fine, then pulled her toward the food court. The two looked incredibly happy together. But Kitose just couldn't accept the reality. She kept scheming ways to break them apart. Kitose declared, the opposite of a honeymoon is returning home to divorce. She said there was no need to create additional conflict. They were already having issues. When Nasa checked his pockets, he realized he forgot his wallet. He ran back to look for it. Kitose was sure Tsukasa would be angry. But, to her shock, Tsukasa followed Nasa back to the bus. She said she'd rather be with him than wait alone. Then the two held hands and walked back to the service area. Kitose kept pretending she didn't care. Inside, Nasa wanted to eat at a chain restaurant. But, Tsukasa was interested in a dish featured on a TV variety show. A sweet and sour udon. It even had lemon slices on top. Tsukasa said they should have a spirit of challenge. But the food was nothing like the show advertised. The flavor was painfully average, exactly as I expected. Nothing like the refreshing sourness she imagined. But when Tsukasa fed Nasa a bite, the mood suddenly felt sweet again. Then Nasa stirred trouble. Didn't you want to challenge yourself? Why not try eating the lemon slice? Tsukasa hesitated, then actually tried it. Her face twisted from the sourness, only to hear Nasa snapping a photo, telling her she looked cute. The atmosphere was ridiculously lovey-dovey. But, Tsukasa felt teased and got adorably upset. In the end, Nasa coaxed her back with melon bread. Seeing Tsukasa cheerful again, Nasa went to the restroom. Kitose instantly ran to Tsukasa, saying she was extremely disappointed. Tsukasa was confused. The bread tasted pretty good. Kitose said Tsukasa was flirting with her partner while eating bread, which made her no different from an ordinary girl. Tsukasa shook her head. Ever since meeting Kitose, she was an ordinary girl. Kitose was about to argue, but a TV show host suddenly appeared. Afraid of getting filmed for a variety segment, Tsukasa grabbed Nasa and fled. Aura also dragged Kitose away. Before leaving, Kitose let out a frustrated scream. Why do you have to get married? Her voice echoed in Nasa's mind. Tsukasa said marriage wasn't just between two people. She worried Nasa's parents might not approve. Nasa said he would definitely talk to his parents properly. Meanwhile, Kitose was forced by the maids to sit down and eat dinner. Seeing the TV host again, Charlotte decided to ask a few questions. Nasa was gradually awakened by Tsukasa. They had arrived in Kyoto. They had half a day before reaching Nasa's hometown. Nasa wanted to take Tsukasa sightseeing around Kyoto's temples, but Tsukasa misunderstood, thinking he wanted to check out nearby food places. Only when Nasa mentioned historic buildings and kimono did she finally understand. It wasn't that she didn't want to go. She was just kind of tired of them. But, seeing Nasa so excited, she still agreed. She even changed into a kimono. With practiced ease, she thought she was already used to it. But, after Nasa complimented her, she still blushed. Meanwhile, Kitose was fuming, saying the two were flaunting their affection nonstop. Even if they filed their marriage papers, she would never acknowledge the marriage. Tsukasa felt helpless, as if dealing with a difficult child. But Nasa hoped their marriage could receive blessings from those around them, so he asked the maids to take Tsukasa sightseeing, while he planned to talk to Kitose alone. But, Kitose said, words alone couldn't move people. They needed action. She would pretend to be his lover, right now. Nasa had to show whether he was truly considerate enough to deserve Tsukasa. Nasa was confident, immediately taking Kitose to ride a rickshaw. Meanwhile, Charlotte was gossiping with Tsukasa, curious how she even fell for Nasa. Tsukasa simply said, he's cute, bullseye. Were they love at first sight? Tsukasa said Nasa had good character and a gentle personality. Meanwhile, Nasa and Kitose were still on the rickshaw. Nasa proudly said he researched everything beforehand and even took Kitose to a famous local dumpling shop. Kitose was shocked by the taste, so this was the hidden gem Nasa found. Nasa smiled, whether exams or dates. He always prepared thoroughly, but Kitose said Tsukasa might not even want to come here. Nasa scratched his head. He didn't know why. When Tsukasa came to Kyoto, she preferred bakery shops and such. Kitose insisted Nasa didn't understand Tsukasa at all. How could he say he loved someone he didn't fully understand? Nasa blushed. There were too many reasons to list, but he still spoke about Tsukasa's good points, one by one. Kitose already knew Tsukasa had great physical abilities. Nasa blushed even harder. Turning into a love-struck mess, Kitose grew frustrated. She actually understood Tsukasa too well. With just Nasa's few words, she could already tell Tsukasa really liked this kind of person. But, she met Tsukasa first. It felt unfair. Nasa said Tsukasa saved his life 2 years ago. But, that wasn't why he loved her, even after the accident. His first thought was, thank goodness I met Tsukasa. Some scientists propose that meeting one's destined partner was as unlikely as discovering alien life. Rare, but not impossible, so NASA firmly believed meeting Tsukasa was the luckiest thing in his life, and he wanted to spend his whole life proving his love, not marrying because of love, but marrying to prove his love. Kito's went silent, then decided to head home first. Tsukasa and NASA boarded the bus. Back to NASA's hometown. Tsukasa didn't expect NASA's home to be in Nara. But NASA said he was born and raised in Tokyo. His parents too, they moved to Nara. Because of his eccentric parents, NASA's father was an archaeologist. When NASA decided to move out, his father suddenly said he wanted to live in the archaeological paradise Nara. His mother wanted to see deer, so the two decided to move. Tsukasa followed NASA near his home and realized it was close to a shrine. NASA was surprised she recognized the area. Tsukasa murmured that even after 1,000 years, geography didn't change much, but thinking about meeting the parents still made her nervous. NASA noticed a head peeking out the door. Opening, it was his mother, Tokiko. She was also nervous about meeting her daughter-in-law. As for NASA's father, Kanami Yuzaki, he was so nervous he hadn't left his room all afternoon. Tsukasa handed them the gifts she brought. Both were too nervous to speak. NASA complained. Aren't you the ones who said you wanted to meet her? Why are you acting like this? At that moment, his father suddenly told NASA to go take a bath first. He wanted to speak with Tsukasa alone. NASA worried they might oppose the marriage, but his mother dragged him away. Fortunately, Tsukasa didn't seem troubled. When NASA finished bathing, she said his parents were nice. As for what they talked about, she kept it a secret. Tsukasa noticed NASA's room in Nara was empty. NASA said he moved out long ago and stored all important items in a safe, so even a fire wouldn't be a problem. Tsukasa said his safety awareness was too high. Tokiko came to remind them that bedding was prepared. She would sleep next door. The soundproofing was decent, but they shouldn't be too loud. NASA was speechless until he saw two futons on the floor. No separate beds this time. He'd be sleeping next to his wife. NASA's heart started racing that night. But, remembering his parents were next door, he still asked Tsukasa whether she wanted an arm pillow. Tsukasa crawled into the futon immediately, then deliberately teased NASA once his arm went numb. She moved away with a smile. NASA puffed his cheeks, saying she had to give him a good night kiss, or he wouldn't forgive her. Tsukasa, embarrassed, still kissed him. In the next room, NASA's father mumbled. Did I hear a weird sound just now? Tokiko told him to shut up and sleep. Don't ask questions he shouldn't ask. The next day, Tsukasa opened her eyes and saw NASA. Then remembered she needed to change. Seeing NASA still asleep, she quickly changed clothes. NASA was already awake, just pretending not to see. When Tsukasa walked around in the yard, she met NASA's father. Being called father so suddenly made Yuzaki panic, so he quickly started talking about NASA, then realized he had nothing to talk about. Tsukasa instantly noticed his anxiety. She started a topic herself, asking about his archaeology work. Yuzaki immediately took her to visit his study, saying he wasn't as smart as NASA. Young people these days didn't seem interested in archaeology. Tsukasa flipped through a rubbing and started laughing. Even love letters can survive as historical artifacts. If I were the one who wrote it, I'd die of embarrassment. NASA was a bit confused, but before he could ask anything, Tsukasa hurried over. Because of their Kyoto trip, NASA assumed she had zero interest in history. But, seeing her chatting with Yuzaki now, she obviously couldn't say she really didn't care about history. Luckily, Aya called everyone to eat. Yuzaki paused what he wanted to ask. Tsukasa thanked him, knowing he had been looking out for her. After eating, Tsukasa insisted that today they must enjoy Nara together. Last time in Kyoto, Kito's ruined their date. This time they had to make it perfect, so the two visited a nearby temple. Tsukasa kept taking pictures to share with NASA's parents. NASA noticed that although Tsukasa didn't care much about history, she remembered details surprisingly well. Tsukasa said she couldn't help it. Her memory was just too good. She added that the creator of this structure is practically being erased from the textbooks already. NASA said that wasn't the point, and suggested they take a couple photo. Tsukasa instantly leaned close, and they snapped a picture under the pagoda. NASA wanted to visit the ruins nearby, Tsukasa told him. The ancient palace was already gone. NASA didn't believe it. It was the famous historical capital, after all, but when they arrived, it was truly just a wasteland. Tsukasa explained that when the capital moved, buildings here were dismantled. Because wood was scarce, the structures now were only reconstructions based on documents, completely different from the originals. Tsukasa felt emotional, saying that 1,300 years ago, a city stood here, with over 100,000 people living their lives. But, now not a trace remains. NASA was about to comfort her. But Tsukasa said things were different now. Technology lets people record memories and share them online. She lifted her phone, wanting to record NASA, but felt like NASA's words were dangerously flag-like. The video was for Nasa's dad. After all, Nasa was curious what deal Tsukasa made with him. Turns out his father was deeply grateful that Tsukasa saved Nasa at the accident when he received the police call that day. He nearly fainted, hearing someone had rescued Nasa, and he wasn't in critical danger. Made the whole family relieved, the entire family breathed again. They believed Nasa was always exceptional, and the person he chose even saved his life. How could they oppose the marriage? They only wanted to thank Tsukasa. Her outstretched hand saved their whole family. After saying goodbye to Nasa's parents, the couple headed back to Tokyo, but when they arrived, their home had actually caught fire. They were homeless in an instant. The landlord looked devastated. The house was gone, but at least everyone was safe. Nasa rushed to check on everyone. After confirming they were okay, he searched the ruins and found the small sapling they got when they registered their marriage. Luckily, it wasn't burned. Nasa said all valuables were stored safely elsewhere, and he had insurance anyway, so the fire damage could be claimed. Tsukasa asked if he planned all that. Even with unexpected disasters, Nasa didn't complain at all. Tsukasa really loved that about him, always positive, never blaming anyone. After another bath together, they wondered where to stay next. Renting a place required a week of processing, so a hotel seemed likely. Nasa got flustered thinking about a hotel, and Arisugawa walked in on him. She teased that he must be thinking something indecent. Judging from what he wasn't hiding, below the waistline, Nasa panicked and dove into the bathwater. Hearing about the fire, Arisugawa offered for them to stay at the bathhouse. Since Nasa often helped out there, letting them stay for a week was no issue. Nasa felt relieved. Tsukasa felt grateful. Nasa never doubted kindness from others, always accepted it honestly, and worked hard to repay it. Arisugawa showed them the available room. Nasa asked if he should consult their family first. Arisugawa said it wasn't necessary, but since Nasa asked, she'd at least inform her sister and mother. They agreed quickly. Arisugawa said the biggest issue now was making her sister Ayan realize Nasa and Tsukasa were already married. Ayan still thought they were just relatives, and her crush on Nasa was way too obvious. Even when she saw the ring on Nasa's finger, she didn't grasp the situation. Only when Nasa said he introduced Tsukasa to his parents, Ayan's brain finally activated. She assumed they were just being filial. Arisugawa felt her sister had reached peak self-delusion. Just then their mother appeared, saying Nasa had married a lovely wife. Ayan froze. Seriously? Her mother was shocked. She didn't know. You always liked Nasa, didn't you? Both Nasa and Ayan turned red. The situation spiraled instantly. Ayan broke down. Her first love died instantly. She tried to enter a first love flashback, but her mother stopped her. You just got dumped. Shouldn't you treat your emotional trauma first? Ayan complained. Is this really my mom? Mom replied. Your dad literally NTR'd me. A little heartbreak is nothing. Nasa felt guilty because he never noticed Ayan's feelings. Arisugawa said it wasn't his fault. If someone never confesses, missing the chance is inevitable. Ayan realized her regret was never speaking up. She congratulated Nasa on his marriage, then suddenly announced she wanted to debut as a tuber. Her family immediately vetoed it. Later, Tsukasa gathered all their laundry. Normally Nasa handled the laundromat runs, but she felt embarrassed this time. Her underwear was mixed in. Nasa honestly admitted he did want to look. Right then Arisugawa showed up to take Tsukasa somewhere. Once they left, Nasa tried to reassure himself. These are going to the laundromat anyway. Folding them should be fine, right? Then he picked up Tsukasa's skirt, blushed, and took a deep sniff. He didn't notice Arisugawa peeking back in. You really are a pervert. She added that Nasa was someone who acted. When the time was right, their future would be exciting. Nasa panicked. After that comment, how could he dare do anything? Later, the couple went to the laundromat. Tsukasa explained that girls' underwear is expensive and delicate, so it needs a mesh laundry bag. Nasa thought deeply about this, then realized Tsukasa was wearing sportswear today. She had washed all her underwear, meaning she was wearing absolutely none now. She blushed under Nasa's stare. Nasa's heart raced. No way. Ready to eat mode, he snapped a photo quickly, feeling like he just pulled and senior level rare wife card. Hearing this, Arisugawa said they needed to buy Tsukasa new clothes. She said a husband who doesn't dress his wife nicely is unreliable. Nasa nervously said he wanted to buy clothes for Tsukasa. Tsukasa thought he meant clothes for himself. He quickly shook his head. No, for you. Tsukasa hesitated. Cute clothes can be pricey, but Nasa was hyped. Buying cute clothes for his wife meant seeing multiple versions of her. Tsukasa asked where he usually shopped. Nasa said supermarkets. Just take one from the top row. Tsukasa paused, then took him to a real clothing store. She picked a few outfits for Nasa to choose from. To Nasa, she looked adorable in anything. Although cute, if others saw her, he felt a little jealous. Tsukasa teased that he was surprisingly possessive, so she let Nasa pick her outfits. NASA's choices were all very girly, but they looked great. Since they were buying clothes anyway, Tsukasa decided to buy new underwear too. She took NASA into a lingerie shop. NASA was stiff with fear, certain he'd look like a creep. Tsukasa held his hand, saying it didn't count as weird, but he still looked too nervous, so she sat him in the waiting area. Curious, NASA checked the prices, and his eyes widened. No wonder girls used laundry bags. This stuff was expensive. Tsukasa only bought cheaper ones, saying underwear was a consumable item. NASA honestly said he wanted to see his wife in cute lingerie. Tsukasa didn't refuse. Both of them blushed and immediately changed the subject. They went to buy NASA's clothes next. The room they were staying in was once owned by the Arisugawa sisters' father, so it had a very Showa-style vibe. Tsukasa told NASA to wait. She then brought out a feast. NASA was shocked. It was homemade tonkatsu. Their family always bought fried foods outside. He didn't expect Tsukasa to make it at home, and since the house had no rice cooker, she cooked the rice in an earthen pot. One bite of the tonkatsu made NASA speechless. It tasted incredible. Tsukasa proudly said he could ask for it anytime. She was a master at making tonkatsu and sauces. Her goal was to make NASA's taste buds dependent on her cooking. After dinner, Tsukasa cleaned up, telling NASA to turn on the TV. But then Arisugawa arrived with a melon, a gift from a theater customer. She dropped it off and left immediately, insisting she'd never be their third wheel. She reminded them the room was far from the main building, so even loud noises wouldn't be heard. The couple blushed deeply. They hurried to cut the melon, a luxury fruit in Japan. NASA picked up a slice and fed it to Tsukasa, because she once fed him noodles before, with just the two of them alone. A bit of sweetness was fine. Tsukasa shyly ate it. Not long after, NASA got a call. Their former landlord finished rebuilding the new house and asked if they wanted to rent it. NASA was happy, but they hadn't decided yet, so moving wouldn't be immediate. Arisugawa smirked mischievously. Hard to make a move on Tsukasa when you're living in someone else's house, huh? But she insisted. A bit of risk makes things more exciting. Because the fire destroyed many items, the landlord gave NASA a big break. No deposit, no guarantee fee, same rent as before. He even sent them the model room address. NASA immediately took Tsukasa there. They didn't expect it to be a luxury apartment. Tsukasa suspected the landlord might be secretly rich, but since they were already here, they decided to go up. The apartment was huge, with its own bath and separate rooms. If the rent stayed the same, this was a massive upgrade. NASA imagined that in a month and a half, they would share the same bath and sleep in the same big bed. His excitement skyrocketed. Finally, he mustered the courage and asked Tsukasa if they could sleep together. After moving in, Tsukasa shyly held his hand. She agreed, saying she preferred it that way to soon. The landlord replied. Turns out the model room of the luxury apartment was sent to the wrong address. Tsukasa wasn't disappointed. She felt anywhere would be fine to live in. A big place makes you proud and happy. A small place lets you stay close to NASA. The important thing isn't the house, it's the person. As long as the person is there, anywhere feels like home. Arisugawa cleans the bathhouse every morning. Today, Tsukasa offered to help. Arisugawa's impression of Tsukasa was still NASA's wife, and NASA is the upperclassman he respects the most. As for why he keeps roasting NASA, despite respecting him, don't ask, he just has his own rhythm. Tsukasa said Arisugawa was very capable. Rather than helping, she felt she was repaying the Arisugawa family's kindness. Faced with such sincerity from a beautiful girl, Arisugawa really couldn't refuse. Very quickly, the two became much closer. Arisugawa even showed Tsukasa the cleaning robot. Tsukasa was shocked. You can really buy something this convenient nowadays? Arisugawa shook his head. This wasn't bought. NASA modified a simple robot into this, and he also built an automatic bucket washing machine for the BATHHOUSE. Then the two split up to clean different areas. Arisugawa wondered whether Tsukasa could clean well, but he was immediately stunned by how efficient she was. After finishing, Tsukasa told him that being able to clean the bathhouse spotlessly every day must be really hard work. Arisugawa blushed. He suddenly understood why NASA liked Tsukasa. She was just too gentle. The bathhouse heats water with firewood. Apparently the heating system was also modified by NASA. Tsukasa was shocked. Just how much does NASA know? Arisugawa said. Many of the bathhouse facilities were modified by NASA. That's why they say the bathhouse is still running. All thanks to him. Arisugawa turned to Tsukasa and thanked her, saying it was thanks to her that NASA survived the accident. Otherwise, NASA might have died in the car crash, and the bathhouse couldn't continue today. Tsukasa said, meeting NASA was also a kind of blessing. After finishing morning chores, Arisugawa packed his bag and went to school. NASA was surprised. They got along so well. Tsukasa said it's normal. After all, they both care about the same person. Behind the door, Aya froze. Oh, her screen time was about to drop. Tsukasa asked Nasa what he wanted to eat. Nasa said curry. She agreed, and went out to buy ingredients. So Nasa happily followed along. Since it was nighttime, they ran into Aya's mother. While leaving the bathhouse, Annie recommended they visit the nearby park, late at night. Perfect timing for crime. Nasa instantly blushed. Now he finally understood where Arisugawa learned all his dirty jokes. At the store, they bought ingredients and grabbed a hot meat buns. Then they walked to the park Annie recommended. If they were high schoolers, the police might lecture them, but they were legally married. They even took a quiet side path. Tsukasa looked at Nasa with an amused smile. Nasa said, "It was really just a coincidence." Tsukasa smiled. "You brought your wife out here, and you really don't want to do anything." Nasa blushed and mumbled he wanted a kiss, then leaned in. Tsukasa rejected him for once. She still had meat bun garlic breath. Even if Nasa didn't mind, she couldn't mentally handle it. Maybe later, but she really liked this part. The world felt huge, and yet it felt like they were the only two people in it. Nasa couldn't resist, and hugged Tsukasa. He meant a gentle hug, but accidentally squeezed her waist. Since they were already hugging, they locked in tightly, and started confessing again. "You're killing the single people here." When Kitose came to find Tsukasa, she discovered the apartment burned down. Luckily, the two were unharmed. She was panicking, trying to find Tsukasa. Then Tsukasa casually passed by, on her grocery run. Kitose asked where they moved. Tsukasa's sister trolled her hard, saying they were living in the park and sleeping in the public facilities, and Tsukasa slipped away. During the confusion, when Tsukasa got home, Nasa was organizing things. He even found a takoyaki pan. Tsukasa learned and Nasa didn't know what a takoyaki pan was, so she decided they'd make takoyaki tonight. If they were making it, she wanted a party. So Nasa invited the Arisugawa siblings. Arisugawa had no objections, but Aya might not take it well. She'd just been heartbroken recently. Right then, Kitose rushed over, almost fooled by Tsukasa again. Nasa told Tsukasa to stop tricking her, because Kitose actually believes it. Aurora and Charlotte arrived. It was their first time in a bathhouse like this, so they pulled Kitose to go bathe together, providing unexpected bath fan service. After relaxing comfortably, they happily said goodbye. Then Kitose suddenly realized, wait, she came here to find Tsukasa. She wondered if Tsukasa could stay at the bathhouse. Why not stay at her home? There's plenty of space. Tsukasa said she couldn't, because this house has a Sega Mega Drive. Shockingly, Kitose accepted that reason, and immediately said she could buy one herself, so Tsukasa would move in. Tsukasa was visibly tempted. Just then, Aya popped out, saying she also wanted a game console. Arisugawa grabbed her sister, announcing they had a takoyaki party. Kitose grew curious. Tsukasa said, with so many people, ingredients might not be enough. The two maids instantly brought a mountain of supplies. Now it was plenty. Tsukasa said she'd start prepping. Aya wondered if young people these days could really cook. A wife who can't cook is unacceptable, she said. Arisugawa asked if Aya herself could cook. Aya replied of course not, because she is. Young people these days. Arisugawa was speechless. At the double standard, that night, Aya was completely conquered by Tsukasa's cooking. Kitose joined the party too. Aya tried acting tough, saying looking good doesn't mean it tastes good. One bite later, she became the iron-willed gourmet lady, but after eating, she kept acting tough, saying cooking alone isn't enough. Aya instantly took out a game cartridge. Let's have a real battle. Nasa wasn't familiar with fighting games, but both Aya and Tsukasa said this game was fun. To help Nasa understand the rules, they decided to teach him first. Turns out Nasa had only ever played solitaire and Minesweeper in fighting games. He was worse than a roadside NPC. So Tsukasa's opponents became Arisugawa and Aya. Arisugawa couldn't beat her, so Aya stepped in. Aurora, watching the chaos, decided to stir things up, suggesting they should have a prize. Charlotte became the host and declared Nasa as the champion's reward. The winner could ask Nasa for anything within reason. Everyone instantly got fired up. Kitose wanted Nasa and Tsukasa to divorce. Meanwhile, Tsukasa and Aya were also rivals in love. After losing to Tsukasa, Arisugawa forfeited. Kitose believed she was pretty good, but Aya destroyed her instantly. Tsukasa immediately realized Aya was a formidable opponent, but she absolutely couldn't give Nasa away, so the two fought fiercely. Tsukasa was competitive too. She lost by a small margin. She gritted her teeth, saying she was rusty from not gaming for a while. So she suggested switching to another game. She pulled out an old-school joystick with only simple attack buttons. The joystick was something she asked Nasa to make. Using old game mechanics, she crushed Aya. By the end, they both forgot Nasa was the prize and were fully absorbed in gaming. Arisugawa commented that both of them were extremely competitive in games, but he also admitted Aya had talent. she quickly grasped the mechanics. Tsukasa had to raise her focus to keep up. In the end, they both lost, but gained a sense of gaming camaraderie. Arisugawa reminded them about the takoyaki, so the party started again. Watching Tsukasa and Nasa cook takoyaki sweetly together, Kito's kept quiet for once. Looks like she was slowly accepting Nasa as her brother-in-law. After everyone left, Nasa asked Tsukasa what she would have wanted if she had won the match. Tsukasa kissed him without hesitation. Nasa recently got a new job, but the workload was heavy. Tsukasa was worried, because after spending time together, she realized Nasa loses control once he starts working. Sure enough, he stayed up all night, finished the job, and suddenly realized he had a 39.8 degrees Celsius fever. Tsukasa panicked and rushed him to the hospital. They got medicine and returned home. Once Nasa realized he was sick, he instantly became weak. Tsukasa said she would take care of him, but Nasa worried he might infect her. Tsukasa said her body doesn't get injured, and she doesn't get sick. Nasa's brain, burning with fever, couldn't process anything. He fell asleep. Tsukasa carefully watched over him, then realized taking care of someone sick was surprisingly easy, especially someone who sleeps the whole time, so she took out a camera to take cute photos. After a long nap, Nasa felt much better. It was already nighttime. Tsukasa asked what he wanted to eat. Nasa didn't have much appetite, said he wanted to change clothes first. Tsukasa instantly perked up, offering to wipe him down. Nasa panicked as his clothes were pulled off. Tsukasa started wiping him with a towel, feeling her soft fingertips. Nasa relaxed immediately. His body was clean, but his temperature went up again, this time from embarrassment. Tsukasa told him to just take everything off so they could bathe together. Nasa refused instantly. If she kept going, he wouldn't be able to hold himself back. He asked if Tsukasa wasn't embarrassed if he had to wipe her back. Tsukasa admitted she would be a bit shy, but she didn't dislike the idea, which made things even sweeter. That night, Tsukasa told him he didn't get sick less often. He just sometimes didn't even notice he was sick. Like the first time they met, he was injured badly, yet still ran after her. A normal person would have collapsed. She said she would watch him closely so he'd take care of himself and not drown and work again. At night, Tsukasa held Nasa while sleeping, saying he had been worried sick and that Nasa must never do that again. Nasa apologized, saying he had been busy with work, actually preparing for the upcoming summer festival. He wanted to go have fun there with Tsukasa. And then, things almost got out of control. They nearly went all the way on the spot, but Tsukasa stopped him, saying his body hadn't fully recovered yet, and he couldn't afford to burn energy like that. Nasa felt overwhelmed with emotion. Marriage was amazing, other than a wife. Who else would worrying about him this much? Parents, please unmute your microphones to comment. When Arisugawa heard they were going to the festival, she suggested that Tsukasa should wear a yukata. No particular reason, just because it's sexy. A married woman plus yukata plus evening atmosphere equals peak spicy. Tsukasa complained, not to drag the conversation into dirty territory. But Arisugawa had already prepared two yukatas for them, and even knew their exact sizes. Tsukasa told Nasa to turn around, so he could get change. Nasa honestly admitted that he wanted to take a peek. Tsukasa was speechless. Nasa really was straightforward in that department. At least he wouldn't secretly peek without saying anything. Nasa nodded. Peeking without permission was wrong. But if the wife agrees, then it doesn't count as peeking. Of course Tsukasa wouldn't refuse, but only allowed one glance. Nasa, being the sneaky genius he was, figured as long as he didn't blink, it still counted as one glance. Anyway, he saw Tsukasa fully dressed in the yukata. He immediately praised his wife, saying she was born beautiful and would look good in anything. Then came a little kiss. The two changed clothes, grabbed their camera, and headed to the festival. They enjoyed some delicious takoyaki, and at one of the stalls, they ran into Aya and Kito's. What a bizarre combination. Turns out Kito's had been dragged there to help. Meanwhile the two maids were eating and having fun in the back. Kito's complained, but her body was very honestly doing all the work. They were running a goldfish scooping booth. Tsukasa said he wouldn't participate. His skill was too strong, and he might bankrupt them. So Nasa became the challenger, and lost instantly the moment he started. Tsukasa comforted him, saying it was okay, because everyone has things they aren't good at. Then he took Nasa to the shrine to make a wish. He had many wishes, one of which was hoping Nasa would live a long life. Tsukasa told Nasa the reason he worries so much is because Nasa's health and life are extremely important to him. Even if stopping Nasa might lead to arguments, he still wanted Nasa to stay healthy. Nasa hugged Tsukasa tightly. With a wife like this, what more could a man ask for? Just as they were about to kiss, Haya and the others rushed over, saying they should all watch the fireworks together. So the two stopped, held hands, and went to join them. Everyone watched the fireworks under the night sky.